35%, that's all Lance Murphy said when he slid the folder across the conference table. No explanation, no build-up, just those two words that turned 20 years of my life into a budget line item. I'm Garrett Wells, 49 years old, and I just watched my career get cut down to size in under 10 seconds. The crazy part? Lance actually thought I'd accept it. Let me back up. I started at Red Canyon Distribution when we operated out of 3 beat-up warehouses in Phoenix, Tucson, and El Paso. This was back in 2004, when our computer system couldn't track a shipment if it crossed state lines without someone manually calling ahead. I was fresh out of the Marines, had some logistics experience from moving supplies through Afghanistan and Iraq, and needed a job that didn't involve people shooting at me. Those military years taught me something most corporate types never learn: how to see the whole picture while managing 1,000 moving parts. In Kandahar, if you miscalculated a supply convoy route, people died. In Afghanistan, weather delays weren't just inconveniences, they were life or death decisions. That mindset served me well in civilian logistics. The stakes were lower, but the principles were the same. Over 20 years, I became the guy everyone called when everything went sideways. Truck breaks down in the middle of the Sonoran Desert at 3 a.m. Call Garrett. Customs holds up a cross-border shipment at the Nogales crossing. Garrett knows which broker can fix it in 2 hours instead of 2 days. Flash flood washes out Interstate 10 between Phoenix and Tucson. Garrett has backup routes mapped out already, including the weight restrictions on rural bridges that most people don't even know exist. I didn't just manage operations, I built the entire Southwest freight network from scratch. Every mile of highway from California to Texas. Every choke point that causes delays. Every customs officer who could speed things up or slow them down. I knew it all. When the automotive plants in Hermosillo needed just-in-time parts delivered or their production lines would shut down, costing them $50,000 per hour, my network made it happen. When monsoon season hit and half the roads in Arizona became impassable, I had alternate routes that kept freight moving while our competitors were stuck in the mud. The thing about logistics is nobody notices it until something goes wrong. My job was making sure nothing went wrong. For 20 years, I redesigned routes, built relationships with drivers who'd been hauling freight since before GPS existed, and kept Red Canyon's Southwest operation running smoother than anyone thought possible. I knew which hubs needed extra staffing during monsoon season. I knew which border crossings moved fastest during shift changes. I knew which carriers would stick with us through a crisis, and which ones would bail at the first sign of trouble. This stuff doesn't come from reading manuals or attending seminars. You learn it by doing the job for 2 decades and caring enough to get it right. You learn it by standing in a warehouse at midnight when a shipment goes missing and having to figure out where it is before the customer calls at 7 a.m. You learn it by building relationships with dock workers, truck drivers, and customs agents, the people who actually move the freight while executives sit in air-conditioned offices making PowerPoint presentations. But here's what killed me. I never asked for anything crazy. Just wanted leadership that understood what I actually did. Most people don't think about logistics until their car parts show up late and their mechanic can't fix their truck. Behind every delivery that actually arrives on time, there's someone like me making 1,000 small decisions that prevent disasters. That's why I gave Red Canyon everything I believed in what we were building. I stayed late when weather systems threatened our routes. I came in early when border delays backed up our cross-dock operations. I worked weekends when seasonal surges pushed our capacity to the breaking point. I took on responsibilities nobody officially assigned me because the alternative was watching the system I'd built fall apart. My wife, Amanda, understood this better than anyone. She's a nurse at Phoenix General, so she gets the idea of being responsible for things that can't wait until Monday. When I'd get calls at 2 a.m. about a breakdown or a route closure, she never complained. She knew that the difference between a successful delivery and a disaster often came down to someone caring enough to handle the problem immediately. "You're too loyal for your own good," she'd tell me, usually after I'd spent another weekend troubleshooting some crisis that could have waited until Monday, but shouldn't have. That company doesn't deserve what you give them. Turns out she was right. When someone spends years telling you they value your dedication, then treats you like you're disposable, it hits different. It makes you question every memory you have of that place, every late night, every weekend, every time you went above and beyond because you thought it mattered. As Red Canyon grew from 3 warehouses to 9 major hubs and 28 smaller facilities across the Southwest, my role kept expanding. I wasn't just a director anymore. I was the guy who designed pretty much everything that kept Red Canyon competitive, but I never made a big deal about it. I just did the work because I cared about doing it right. The irony is that success made me invisible. When everything runs smoothly, people assume it's automatic. They don't see the planning, the relationships, the institutional knowledge that prevents problems from happening in the first place. They just see the results and think anyone could have achieved them. The meeting that changed everything was scheduled for 8 a.m. on a Tuesday in early March. Early morning meetings are never about good news. They're about control, about catching people before they're fully awake and thinking clearly. When I walked into the executive conference room, Lance was already sitting at the head of the glass table, hands folded, wearing that expression people get when they've already made up their minds about something you don't know yet. Next to him sat Jessica Parker, the new COO who'd come over with Lance from some retail chain back east. Jessica had this practice smile from her MBA program, the kind that says people are just numbers on a spreadsheet, and she's really good with spreadsheets. "Garrett, thanks for coming in," Lance said, using that fake warm voice they teach executives in leadership seminars. I sat down across from them, morning sun casting long shadows on the polished table. The view from up here was nice. You could see the whole Red Canyon complex. Trucks coming and going, the machine I'd built humming along perfectly. He pushed a folder toward me like he was handing over a restaurant menu. "We've been looking at compensation across the operations division. Found some areas that need adjustment to match current industry standards." Industry standards. I'd heard that phrase before during my years, watching corporate consultants come and go. It always meant the same thing. "We found a way to pay you less, and we're going to dress it up in business language so it sounds rational." I kept my voice steady. "What kind of adjustments?" Jessica tapped her tablet like she was delivering a medical diagnosis. "Your current salary is significantly above the national average for logistics directors in companies of similar size." National average. Sure, if you ignore that most other directors handle one facility, maybe two, not a multi-state network with cross-border operations and seasonal surges that can make or break automotive production schedules. If you ignore that those other directors didn't build their networks from scratch during the biggest expansion period in Southwest logistics history. But I let her talk. "We're proposing a salary adjustment," Lance continued, his voice getting that careful tone executives use when they're about to hurt you. 35% reduction, plus performance bonuses tied to measurable cost savings and efficiency improvements. Right there, I knew they didn't understand anything about what I'd built or how it worked. They wanted to cut my pay by more than a third, then offer me bonuses for helping them cut more costs. Like the whole network wasn't already running on the thinnest possible margins between efficiency and disaster. Like I hadn't already eliminated every possible inefficiency over the past 20 years. 35% cut, I repeated quietly, letting the words hang in the air. Lance leaned back like we were having casual conversation about weekend plans. It's a chance to reset things, show the board we're serious about running lean operations in a competitive market. Reset things, running lean. Corporate speak for "we think you cost too much and someone cheaper can do your job." The funny thing was, they probably believed it. People who've never actually run operations always think it's easier than it looks. I took a breath, fighting back the urge to laugh. "And if I don't agree to this adjustment," Lance's smile flickered just a little, like a bad fluorescent light, "then we'd need to look at other staffing options. People who can handle similar responsibilities at a more reasonable compensation level. Other staffing options." Translation. "We'll replace you with someone who'll work for less." The threat wasn't even subtle. The funny part wasn't that he was threatening me. It was that he actually believed it would work, that after 20 years of building something from nothing, I'd be so scared of losing a paycheck that I'd accept getting kicked in the teeth. I looked Lance straight in the eye. "So after 20 years of building this operation, you're saying my value just dropped by 35% overnight?" "We're saying the company needs to optimize for current market conditions." Jessica jumped in smoothly, like she'd practiced this conversation in front of a mirror. Nothing personal, just business reality. Optimize. I'd watched people like Jessica destroy entire operations because they confused optimization with oversimplification. They treated expertise like overhead instead of insurance against million-dollar disasters. They saw smooth operations and assumed anyone could maintain them, never understanding that smooth operations don't happen by accident. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a negotiation, this was a declaration. They'd already decided I was a cost center, not a profit driver. They wanted me to roll over and accept their terms, not push back with inconvenient facts about what I actually contributed. In their minds, I was just another line item in a budget spreadsheet, and line items don't get to argue about their value. Lance closed his folder like a judge wrapping up court proceedings. We need your answer by Friday. The board has already approved this restructuring, and we're moving ahead quickly to implement the changes. 72 hours. 72 hours to decide whether to accept getting financially humiliated or walk away from 20 years of my professional life. 3 days to choose between swallowing my pride and starting over at 49 years old. Got it, I said, standing up slowly. I'll have an answer for you Friday. When I walked out of that room, I didn't head straight back to my office. I needed real air, not the recycled corporate atmosphere that always smells like copy toner in desperation. I went out to the loading dock and watched forklifts buzzing around like worker bees, drivers checking manifests, supervisors coordinating the morning sortation. None of them knew the hive was already cracking from the inside. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, replaying Lance's words, reset things, industry standards, optimize, market conditions. Every phrase sounded so clean, so calculated, so completely disconnected from what I actually did every day. People like him make decisions from conference rooms filled with charts and projections. People like me keep companies from falling apart in the real world where trucks break down, weather doesn't follow forecasts, and customers don't care about your excuses when their freight doesn't arrive. That's when I realized something that should have been obvious. Lance had never actually run anything. He'd managed people who ran things. Sure, he'd optimized operations that other people built, but he'd never been the guy standing in a warehouse at midnight trying to figure out how to reroute 50,000 packages because a bridge washed out. He'd never had to explain to a customer why their critical shipment was delayed or convince a carrier to make an emergency pickup that wasn't in their contract. Back in my office, I didn't panic or feel sorry for myself. When life sucker punches you, the worst thing you can do is freeze up and hope someone else fixes it. Instead, I opened my desk drawer where I kept 20 years of proof, every performance review, operational report, efficiency study, and cost savings analysis I'd produced. Not some sentimental collection of memories, hard evidence, evidence of every dollar I'd saved Red Canyon, every crisis I'd prevented, every disaster I'd quietly rerouted before it hit anyone's radar. Contract retention rates that stayed above 95% because of carrier relationships I'd built from scratch. Seasonal bottlenecks eliminated because of capacity models I developed through trial and error. Millions in potential losses prevented because I caught routing problems before they turned into federal compliance nightmares or customer defections. The documentation told a story Lance and Jessica couldn't see from their spreadsheets. Like the time in 2019 when Hurricane Rosa was tracking towards Southern California, and I rerouted our entire westbound network 48 hours before the storm hit. While our competitors were scrambling to find alternate routes after their freight got stranded, our deliveries kept moving. We picked up 3 new major clients that month from companies whose previous logistics providers had failed them when it mattered most. Or the border situation in 2021 when COVID restrictions created massive delays at every crossing from Brownsville to San Diego. I'd spent years cultivating relationships with customs brokers on both sides, understanding which paperwork expedited processing and which inspectors were reasonable about documentation discrepancies. While other companies watched their cross-border freight sit in holding yards for weeks, ours moved through in days. The irony was perfect. The smooth operations Lance bragged about inheriting during his first month, those were my systems. He saw everything running like clockwork and assumed it was automatic. Guys like him always make that mistake. When things work flawlessly, they think it's easy. When things blow up, they finally see the invisible hands that were holding everything together. I opened my email and searched for names I'd been saving for years. Regional VPs, directors, recruiters from competitors who'd tried to recruit me more times than I could count. Messages from Summit Logistics, Desert Star Transport, even some of the big national carriers who'd noticed what I was building at Red Canyon. I'd always said no. Loyalty used to be my thing, but loyalty becomes stupidity when you're being loyal to people who treat it like a discount coupon. I wrote 4 messages. Short, professional, honest. I didn't oversell myself or beg for opportunities, just said I was exploring new options and would be open to discussions. I mentioned I had extensive Southwest network experience and a track record of building profitable operations from scratch. Before hitting send, I called Amanda. She was between shifts at the hospital, grabbing coffee in the break room. They did it, I said without preamble. The pay cut. Her voice was tired but not surprised. We'd been expecting this ever since Lance arrived with his team of consultants and their efficiency studies. 35%. They want me to take a 35% cut and be grateful for the opportunity to earn bonuses by helping them cut more costs. Silence on the line for a few seconds. Amanda's seen enough corporate downsizing at the hospital to know how these things work. What did you tell them? That I'd give them an answer Friday? Good. Don't let them pressure you into deciding right now. She paused, and I could hear someone paging a doctor in the background. Garrett, we'll be fine, whatever you decide. The kids are both doing well, the house is almost paid off, and I've got steady work. Don't let them make you afraid. That's my wife. 22 years of marriage, and she still knows exactly what I need to hear. Not sympathy, not outrage on my behalf, just the facts that matter. We'd built a solid life together, and it wouldn't crumble because some corporate executives didn't understand my value. I'm going to send some emails, I told her. Test the water. See what else is out there. About time. You should have done this 5 years ago when Morrison was trying to recruit you. She was right. Morrison had been VP of Operations at Summit Logistics and had made it clear they'd love to have someone with my background and network. I'd turned him down because I believed Red Canyon was my company too, that all the years I'd invested meant something beyond just a paycheck. I hovered over the send button for maybe 10 seconds. Not because I doubted what I was worth, but because it's hard to walk away from something you built, even when staying means accepting that it was never really yours in the first place. I hit send on all 4 messages. Right away, I felt this weight lift off my shoulders. Clean, steady relief, replacing the sting Lance had tried to deliver. Within 2 hours, I had responses from 3 of the 4 companies. Within 6 hours, I had preliminary phone interviews scheduled with Summit and Desert Star. By Wednesday afternoon, I was driving to Summit's headquarters in Tempe for a face-to-face meeting with Carl Davidson, their CEO. Carl was everything Lance wasn't. Mid-50s Spart, started in logistics as a dock worker, understood operations from the ground up. He'd built Summit from a small regional carrier into a serious player in Southwest freight. When I walked into his office, the walls were covered with route maps, carrier certifications, and photos of facilities under construction. This was someone who understood what we actually did for a living. Garrett Wells, he said, standing up from behind a desk covered with shipping manifests and capacity reports. I've been hoping we'd have this conversation for about 5 years now. We talked for 2 hours, not about salary or benefits, but about logistics, about the challenges of cross-border operations, the complexity of managing seasonal surges, the relationships that make the difference between success and failure. Carl understood that good operations management isn't about following procedures. It's about preventing the situations where procedures break down. We're expanding aggressively into automotive logistics, he told me, the just-in-time delivery market. But I need someone who understands that one missed delivery can shut down an entire production line. I knew that market inside and out. Red Canyon handled parts delivery for 3 major assembly plants, and I'd designed the routing protocols that kept their lines running. What would you want from me? I asked. Executive Vice President of Southwest Operations. You'd have complete authority over routing, carrier relationships, and facility operations from California to Texas. Build it however you think it should work. The offer he made was 45% more than my current salary at Red Canyon, plus equity participation and performance bonuses tied to growth, not cost-cutting. They wanted to expand, not shrink. They valued experience, not youth. They understood that good people cost money because bad people cost more. I told him I'd need until Friday to give him an answer, even though I already knew what that answer would be. Friday morning felt different, sharper. I walked into Red Canyon knowing it was my last day as operations director, and somehow that made everything clearer. My resignation letter was sitting on my desk like a promise I was ready to keep. I picked it up and walked straight to the executive floor. Lance's assistant looked up, surprised to see me without an appointment. He's in a meeting with the quarterly review team. Trust me, he'll want to take this one, I said, and pushed open the conference room door before she could stop me. Lance and Jessica looked up from whatever charts they were reviewing, expressions switching between annoyed and fake professional. 4 other executives I didn't recognize were sitting around the table, probably more consultants brought in to optimize things they didn't understand. I placed the envelope right in front of Lance. My decision, I said simply. Lance hesitated before opening it. like he sensed this wasn't going to go the way he'd planned. When he read the first line, his eyebrows shot up. "You're resigning." "Effective in 2 weeks, I'll make sure everything gets transitioned properly," I confirmed. He blinked like this possibility had never occurred to him. "Garrett, we figured you'd take the weekend to think it over." The adjustment wasn't set in stone. It was a starting point for discussion. I almost laughed out loud. "Lance, that wasn't a discussion, that was a message, and I heard it loud and clear." Jessica leaned forward with that artificially sweet tone executives use when they realize they miscalculated. "I'm sure we can work out terms that recognize your experience while meeting our budget constraints." I shook my head. "You had 20 years to do that." Silence filled the room like dust settling after an explosion. Not hostile silence, just the quiet that comes when everyone realizes the conversation is over. Except it wasn't my resignation hanging in the air, it was theirs. "We have capable managers who can take over your responsibilities," Lance said, sounding defensive now. "This won't be as disruptive as you think." "You're right," I agreed. "You won't notice anything today or tomorrow, maybe not even next week." I let that sink in for a second. "But you will notice." I watched his face twitch slightly. "Are you saying the operation can't function without you?" "I'm saying systems don't run on paperwork alone," I replied calmly. "You just eliminated the institutional knowledge that kept this place from collapsing under its own complexity." "Where are you going?" he finally asked. "Summit Logistics." "They offered me Executive VP of Southwest Operations. I'll be building their new automotive logistics network from the ground up." The color drained from Jessica's face. She suddenly understood what that meant. Summit wasn't just another competitor. They were Red Canyon's fastest-growing threat in automotive logistics. And now they'd have the guy who designed Red Canyon's most profitable operations. "I'll have the transition documents finished by end of day," I said, standing up. "After that, the network is all yours to optimize." Walking out of there, I didn't feel like I'd won some big victory. Just felt relieved, like finally setting down a heavy bag I'd been carrying for years without realizing how much it weighed. My 2-week notice period was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. Not the kind that announces itself with loud crashes, but the quiet kind where things just start falling apart piece by piece until the whole system collapses. By Monday of my first week, the first crack showed up. One of the routing analysts, someone Lance figured could handle my responsibilities, approved a freight consolidation between our Phoenix and Albuquerque hubs without checking weight restrictions for that corridor. Any Southwest ops manager who's been doing this for more than a month knows those limits change seasonally based on road conditions. That morning, 2 of our trucks got stopped by inspectors because they were overweight. The fines were manageable, but the delay meant we missed our delivery window for a major auto parts client. One delay by itself isn't the end of the world, but in logistics, delays never stay isolated. They spread like cracks in a windshield. Tuesday brought problem number 2. Our El Paso inbound sortation completely backed up because containers that were supposed to go to Phoenix got sent to Tucson by mistake. Without the predictive load balancing system I'd developed over years of trial and error, they just threw more trucks at the problem instead of actually solving it. The result? Tucson got overwhelmed. El Paso ground to a halt. Phoenix ran out of freight and every facility downstream felt the pain. The freight network works like blood flow. If one artery gets clogged, the whole body suffers. Day 5 brought the real disaster. The new operations coordinator approved a carrier switch in the middle of the month without understanding our seasonal contracts. He thought he could save money by moving 2 major automotive lanes to a cheaper regional carrier. Problem was he didn't know that carriers' terminals were always behind on processing during spring surge season. He also didn't check the weather forecast showing storms tracking across Oklahoma and northern Texas storms I would have routed around automatically. Within 24 hours, we had a backlog of almost 18,000 packages, 5 distribution centers flashing red on every dashboard, and contract violation notices from 2 clients who were famous for having 0 patience with operational failures. 10 weeks later, I was settled into Summit Logistics and loving every minute of it. For the first time in years, I was building something new without having to fight for every resource or justify every decision to people who didn't understand the work. Carl Davidson gave me complete authority over Southwest operations and the budget to do it right. Summit wanted my experience, my relationships, my systems. They weren't shy about saying so either. I was finalizing our new automotive logistics division when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Garrett," the voice said, and I could hear the strain immediately. "It's Lance." For a few seconds, I didn't respond. The collapse must have gotten bad enough that he couldn't hide it from the board anymore. "I'd like to discuss bringing you back to Red Canyon in a senior executive role." Interesting choice of words considering the state their operation was in. "I'm listening," I said. "Over the past several weeks, we've experienced some operational challenges. The transition hasn't gone as smoothly as projected, and it's become clear that the network requires knowledge that—" He paused, swallowing his pride, "that only you possess." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at Summit's perfectly organized operations floor. "What are you offering, Lance?" "Executive VP of Operations. Complete authority over Southwest Logistics. Your compensation would be fully restored and increased 45% above your previous level, plus equity participation." The desperation in his voice told me this wasn't generosity, it was necessity. "Lance," I said slowly, "you offered me a 35% pay cut because you thought someone cheaper could do my job. What changed?" He let out a long breath. "We underestimated the complexity of what you'd built. The board now understands that your oversight was essential to our operations." I didn't ask what specific disasters had convinced them. I already knew from industry contacts that Red Canyon had lost 4 major automotive clients and faced $8.5 million in operational losses over 2 quarters. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I found something better. Garrett, please. This is about more than Red Canyon. The entire Southwest freight network needs stability. I gave Red Canyon 20 years. You valued that at a 35% cut. You don't get to talk about loyalty when you're drowning. What would it take?" He finally asked, his voice cracking. "It would take going back in time to before you decided my experience was overhead instead of infrastructure." Long silence. Then, "I understand." And he hung up. 3 months later, Summit acquired Red Canyon's assets for 30 cents on the dollar. I became regional president of the combined Southwest operations, managing everything I'd originally built plus Summit's innovations and capital backing. These days, I've got 2 things framed on my office wall. On the left, Lance's memo proposing my 35% salary cut. On the right, the industry award Summit received for designing the most efficient automotive logistics network in the Southwest. That contrast tells the whole story. One company saw me as overhead to eliminate. The other saw me as infrastructure to invest in. The difference between those perspectives was worth $8.5 million in losses to Red Canyon and became the foundation for Summit's market dominance. Sometimes people call it corporate restructuring or optimization, but I know what it really is. The expensive lesson companies learn when they confuse cost-cutting with value creation. Red Canyon learned it the hard way. I just made sure I wasn't around to pay the price for their education. The hardest lesson I learned at 49 wasn't that companies don't value loyalty. It's that your worth isn't determined by who's willing to pay for it, but by who's willing to invest in it. When you've spent decades building something with your hands and your mind, walking away isn't giving up. It's finally understanding that the foundation you built can support something even greater somewhere else.
I'm freezing. I'm bleeding. Slowly fading away. But don't worry, I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile. Every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here. Maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slow, inside, but I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, know it's just my last defense, 'cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. No, I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside, but I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay.
They say just forget. Move on like it's easy. But forgetting you feels like remembering someone I've never seen. I've been trying to erase you from the places in my mind, but the harder that I fight it, the more you're hard to leave behind. Every memory keeps slipping through the cracks I try to close, like a face I should remember, but somehow never know. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo, 'cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true. Every moment turns to fragments, every thought just fades to blue, like I'm searching for a feeling that still only leads to you. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo, 'cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true. But now every empty moment still reminds me what is real. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo, 'cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true.